Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Welcome and thank you for joining us today as we pay tribute to those who have served and we remember their sacrifice.
Attention! Guard, slow, march! Guard! Halt! Guard, stand up! Ace!
Today is a dedication ceremony in which we will honour 22 previously unmarked graves of returned service persons from the Boer War, the Great War and World War II. You may be seated. I would now like to welcome Mr. Jim Simmons for a welcome address. Mr. Simmons is a Vietnam veteran and also a former Roma local.
Just before I start the address, I'll just let you know that war graves or those who returned from operational service and have been killed on operational service as late as 1966, 2 years ago, Manix Rennie from he's an ex-Korean vet, found the grave of one of the troops that was part of my unit. He was killed at Yibon Ratchathani in Thailand, and it's hard to believe that in this modern era that there would be an unmarked grave in that period of time. And he had a full military service, so it's something that we've got to be aware of, and it's important that these days are not forgotten and that we keep finding these unmarked graves and put it right. Distinguished guests, all from federal government, state, local government, descendants of the returned service personnel of whose graves we are dedicating today, and all other attendees, both adults and children, and a big thank you to all who have made this ceremony so special. Put your hands together for those that have done it. It's just so wonderful. There are 3 people who elected themselves to make sure that these graves, unmarked, remain no longer unmarked. Their effort to see this through so far is nothing short of huge. However, these 3 people would see themselves in a most humble manner. These same 3 people have done this for a number of years, and yes, others, when asked, have done their bit to ensure that days like this really happen. Today we pause to honour the brave men and women of Australia's Defence Forces, those who have stood in uniform at home and abroad. In service of our nation, their sacrifice has shaped the freedoms we enjoy and the peace we too often take for granted. But among these medals and memorials, there are stories that return untold. Scattered across the country and indeed across the world are unmarked graves, the resting place of soldiers, sailors, airmen, nurses, whose names have faded, but with time, some never returned from battle, others returned, but were forgotten in the life and in death. It is not enough to remember those whose names are etched in stone. We must also strive to honour those whose stories are hidden in the shadows of history. Let us commit as a nation to recognising every life given in our defence, whether known or unknown, marked or unmarked. Every service member deserves dignity in death, just as they showed courage in life, lest we forget.
Thank you very much for that welcoming address. I would now like to ask Mr. Brendan Wormsley also a former Roma local, for a Bible reading.
Well, good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real privilege to be a part of this ceremony here this morning. The words of Jesus in the Gospel of John speak directly to the heart of what we commemorate today. John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends." This verse captures a truth that transcends time, culture, and place. It speaks to a kind of love that is not just felt, but lived. A love expressed through courage, selflessness, and sacrifice. As Australians, we hold a deep and abiding respect for those who have served our country, especially those who gave their lives or returned forever changed. We understand that freedom is not free. It comes at a cost. And we believe as a community and as a nation in the importance of honouring that cost, of ensuring that those who laid down their lives or stood willing to are never forgotten. In dedicating these graves today, we do more than mark a place. We acknowledge a profound act of love. We give voice to the gratitude we feel and the memory we carry. And in reading this passage from Scripture, we are reminded that such love, such sacrifice is sacred. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. May we never take for granted the freedom won through such love. May the memory of those who served and sacrificed be forever honoured. May their courage inspire us, their example guide us, and their legacy live on in the way we care for one another and for our nation. And may the God of peace grant them rest, and grant us the wisdom to live in gratitude and unity. Amen.
Thank you very much for that, Brendan. You heard in Mr. Simon's speech there were three people who were very, very involved and behind making today happen. And it is now my pleasure to introduce to you all one of those three, well-known Roma local in the volunteer committee circles, and also one of the organisers of today, to let us all know how this happened. Mr. Jim Robinson.
Thanks for coming today. Appreciate that. If I could just sort of give a bit of an idea of what we're doing here, how we got here. It's been a long drawn out affair, but if you just bear with me for a while. I remember on Saturday the 6th of April 2018, I received a phone call from my mate Bruce Kosh up at Elray Station at Gunnerman. Paddy Kerr just happened to be at my house when I took the call. Bruce had a discussion with his neighbour, Cliffy Harland of Glen Olive Station. The main topic of conversation was the unmarked grave of a World War I veteran buried on Glen Olive. Cliffy Holland was most upset that nobody was taking any interest in the 100-year-old grave. Bruce knew that both Paddy and myself were members of the local RSL, and hence the phone call to me to hopefully incite an interest in the grave. Both Paddy and I told Bruce that we would look into it, and if he could give us the details of the soldier, and we would pass it on as a local project to the local Injune RSL sub-branch. But now the fun part starts. What is the soldier's name, Bruce? No idea, Jim, but we do know he's buried somewhere on portion 16 of Glen Olive, grave unknown. Well, that's not a good start, but luck was on our side. Paddy's sister, Beryl Giles, had recently compiled a book of Roma and District World War I, 1914 to 1921 war casualties, and when approached, the portion 16 triggered something in her memory. Paddy rang on Sunday morning to advise that Beryl had sat up that night searching the book, and on page 246 had found reference to portion 16 for World War I soldier Walter Newbury Ford, who had died in 1920. At least we had a name. The self-appointed committee of three was formed on Sunday the 7th of April 2018, and we informed Bruce that we would proceed. Checks were done, relatives contacted in Somerset in the UK, and work commenced. with valued help from local girl, who's here today, I can see, Bill Sanford, Bruce Kosh and Clippy Harland. They're all local graziers. We erected a headstone, plaque and fence around the grave of Walter Newbury Ford. The grave ceremony and dedication was carried out at no cost on Australia Day 2021 on site at Glen Olive, and Clippy Harland was finally smiling. Following the success of that project, we were approached by Debbie Duff and Putty Chandler, who informed us of an unmarked military grave within the Injune Cemetery. Did we need another project? Well, at least on this one we had a name and a location. Private Leslie Keys was laid to rest in the Injune Cemetery. We tracked down Darryl Keys down at Clifton, a relative of Les Keys, who gave us permission to construct a headstone for him. Local sculptor, Graham Girl, sourced the sandstone rock and fashioned a headstone for Les's grave. Checks were done, and at the same time, we identified 37 men and women with military connections who were also buried in the Injune Cemetery. We incorporated the dedication of Private Keys' grave as well as the dedication of the 37 military graves in Injune celebrations 11th to the 19th June 2022. The committee was proud that we once again achieved our aims at no cost. Man-hours and materials were provided free of charge, and the local Injune RSL funded the brass plaque for Private Les Keys' grave. Whilst all this was happening, Beryl informed us that she'd been sitting on records of unmarked military graves within the Roma cemetery. Did we need another project? She presented the list of names she had, and we perused them, and we decided we'd attempt 10 graves. All checks were carried out and permission given to the 10 soldiers that we selected for recognition. We wondered how we were to carry this out, as the committee had no funds or likelihood of any funding. We approached Russell Grilke, told him of our aspirations, and he agreed to supply manpower and materials at no cost to us. He then asked us about the funding for the brass plaques. We told him we hadn't thought that far ahead. As we already knew, Russell was a very active member of the Roma Rotary Club, and he advised us to approach them, as they are always looking for smaller projects to fund. I had a meeting with them, outlined our needs and desires for the graves, which in time became known as Stage 1. The Rotary Club kindly agreed to fund the cost of the plaques. Russell and his boys carried out the work on the graves. The plaques were required, and on Saturday the 19th of March 2023, we dedicated the graves of the 10 soldiers in Stage 1. Once again, at no cost, thanks to Russell and Rotary. We knew of more soldiers lying in the unmarked graves here in the Roma Cemetery. We decided to proceed with what is now Stage 2 of the graves program. We felt with the experience quietly growing that we would try to expand our horizons. We started on Stage 2 with a view to handling 20 graves, double what we had completed on Stage 1. At the end of the selection criteria, we settled finally on 22 graves, which we are dedicating today. All checks were done, and permission from the families and the DBA were given. Once again, we had no funding, but in discussions, Georgie Adams from the Marinara Regional Council informed us that grants were available from the Queensland Government for approved projects. Our self-appointed committee was and is affiliated with the Roma Historical Precincts Incorporation, which oversees the works being carried out at the butter factory. The RHPI applied for what we thought was an appropriate grant for what we were trying to achieve in Stage 2. This application, in conjunction with the Marinara Regional Council, was overseen every step of the way by Georgie Adams. Unfortunately, on 2 occasions, our application was rejected, which set us back over 12 months. The Queensland Government changed at the last election. The Marino Regional Council applied for a third time and our application was accepted and fully funded through the Queensland Remembers Community Grants Program. Our thanks must go to the Queensland Government for assisting our committee in what we consider a very worthwhile community project. Russell Grilke was advised of the grant, and in time the graves were commenced and completed. Only this time Russell was going to be paid. The brass plaques were ordered through John Owens at Marino Funeral Service and capably administered by Deb Cormack. The plaques were installed by Russell's boys on the 15th of August. Of course, our committee of three were only the driving force. We could not have achieved since 2018 what we have without the help and dedication of so many people. Too many to name, but so valuable to us. But in saying that, I would like to thank Russell Grilke, Paul Bentley, Brandon Lowcock and Josiah Warrido from Grilke Concreting, as well as John Owens, known as Tape Measure to his friends, and his capable assistant Deb Cormack for their help. Finally, a sincere thanks to Georgie Adams and Dale Walden for their efforts during the course of the grant application. Roma and district is a wonderful place to be in the world. Now, thank you once again for attending this morning's ceremony, which we feel pays tribute to our soldiers and gives them the final dignity they deserve, lest we forget.
Thank you very much for that, Jim, or Robbo, as you are known to a lot of people. It's very much good to see an insight as to how this all came about and the hours and hours, days and years by that timeline that's gone into making today happen. Our guest speaker for today is also another well-known Roma identity, Mr. Noel Paddy Kerr. He's a Roma local, a Vietnam veteran, and he has also been instrumental in organising today's events. Mr. Paddy Kerr will now be our guest speaker, so please welcome Paddy to the stage.
Thanks, Bryce. Welcome, veterans, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. This is the fifth dedication we've completed between India and Roma. They do not get easier. Today I'd like to take you on a journey with me. Starts in 66, 67, you're about a 19, 20-year-old, walking across the yard and your mother gives you an official letter. You open it up, your life and many others are about to change. The letter has been called up for national service, the military forces of the Commonwealth for 2 years and 3 years reserve, to report to Northern Command Depot Ashgrove on the 19th of 4th, 67. Welcome to the unknown. Report to the Army base at Ashgrove, say your goodbyes to all board the bus, and when you're about to be taken to Singleton, New South Wales. When you get about Goodna, the sergeant unfolds the Australian flag and you solemnly swear to defend Australia, its people against all foreign and domestic enemies. Arriving at Saigon, at Singleton, breakfast, scrambled eggs, baked beans, your first army meal. Over to get your uniform, anything fits. You have to swap to get your size. Next the barber. Those long 60 hair, gone. I have more hair now, I think. You're given a bunk, covered each morning. There's an inspection. When you come back, you're training all day. Your bed and stuff will be all on the floor. After 2 weeks, your gear is not correct, and your bed's no creases. You'll get toilet duty, scrubbing them with a toothbrush. Your first lesson, make sure your gear is ready, because when you NVA or the Viet Cong come, there are no second chances. After 10 months training, you'll get your orders to go to Vietnam. You're now an Australian soldier in South Vietnam. Some of this I'll read now will be from Major Michael Van Bergen, OAM. Little has been said about the men and women who served at that time, the conditions in which we experienced. the sound, the smells, the fears of the Vietnam War, and what makes men and women of our army so unique, which drives the ordinary Australians to perform extraordinary things in time of war. The Australian soldier is identified by their battalion. It's their family. It leads, clothes, directs and exhausts them. It's the veins of their sections and platoons. Its limbs the companies. It can inspire their action. It can drive them beyond exclusion and to provide the depth of comradeship rarely achieved elsewhere. You may have an exclusion club demanding rules of entry, but few amenities. Much has been written about the battles, the incidents, the terror, death, the horrible warning suffered during the Vietnam War, but sadly not much of the oppressive and stressful conditions our soldiers had to endure day and night for 12 months, and some went back for more. Most of the war in Vietnam was in the jungle. It can be your friend in concealment. It can be where you can find a place to hide, but offers the same level of concealment for enemy. On patrol, your breathing needs to be quiet, but the humidity and stress of times you have difficulty in catching your breath, particularly if you are sending a 1 and 2 grade fully loaded. Each step can be challenging due to the slippery conditions, the tiring of legs, the pumping of adrenaline, which is running through your body, watching for the signs of enemy. You must remain alert and positive, but the conditions seem to make your mind wander at times when you're worried about more internally than about your discomfort and externally about the likely enemy threat. When you're confronted by the enemy, you need to be in a state of readiness, capable to fight. The sweat drains all over your body, running in your eyes, causing distraction, and no amount of padding with your sweat raid can make any difference. The spiders, the snakes, the bugs, the ants, leeches, and sometimes bigger things, we are wary of them and we get used to them. Your backpack full of rations, armour, ammo, batteries, sundries is heavy. An ill-fitted backpack will make a rash, and in humidity and wet it's hard to heal. Your clothing and boots, no jocks or socks, are saturated and your feet are getting waterlogged. Each step becomes more uncomfortable and painful. You must push on. If you lose concentration, you and your mates are dead. After a period of time operating in these such conditions, you get more comfortable about being uncomfortable. Any discomfort is just accepted of part of the role of the Australian soldier who has been in jungle warfare since World War II. The jungle is your friend provided you observe all the tactical training that you have had. You must be very fit to fight, and you must fight to be fit. Pain is temporary. Quitting lasts forever. We've been in Vietnam for 4 months and received orders of our trucks to travel to Saigon. In Vietnam, you drive on the right-hand side of the road, so when you go from here over to there, you've got to swap sides. As the Tet offensive was on, the road was too dangerous to travel. We went by boat. As we were loaded on the barge at Vung Tau, went to Saigon by road up to Long Binh. On the 13th of 5th, 68, we're given the orders to travel to Firebase Coral, which is 40 miles north of Saigon. About 20 kilometres out, our spotter plane was shot down. As we approached Firebase Coral, you can smell the chemicals in the air, the gun smoke in the air from the battle last night. The choppers were taking the last of the 22 wounded Australians to Vung Tau Hospital. In the shell hole, the bodies of the 52 dead NVA. There is a lone guard who guards over the 9 body bags of the 9 young Australians who died last night. They'll be taken back for their angel flight home. You have no time to mourn the dead, as you have to dig your foxhole deeper. Your rifle M60 needs to be ready. The bugle sounds. You see a green tracer. You know the NVA are coming again. As the battle goes on, the 102 Battery Australia and 161 of New Zealand send up a green flare and yell out Spinix or Bees Hive. You know you must be at the bottom of a hole. Spinix is the shout of the 102 which has 7,200 small darts in it. About half an inch of matchstick long, it takes all that's in its path. The hardest emotional memories we have of Vietnam is not being able to mourn our dead. Due to the nature of the war, the vegetation terror, the memories of our share of our dead is a body bag being winched up in the helicopter. No time to mourn, no time to reflect. Safety catch off, back to search and destroy mode. Your self-provision modes over rides and through sorrow mourning. No wonder for years we have been non-technical, cold and different, and particularly in family and friends. This is very much the war through the eyes of us on the ground. With the support arms of others who have endured these obsessive conditions, we now, some 57 years since the last troops come out of Vietnam, sufficient to engage the political dialect of the pros and cons of the Vietnam War, but I can say that there were many young men and women who went off that far place full of hope, pride, seeking to make a difference. So did with valid determination and a certain apprehension, but never did I see them waver and falter in their mission. Many of us have memories about the times in Vietnam. I'm not consumed with the bad memories which are locked away. There are good times for watching young men and women from different backgrounds working together as a team, enjoying each other's company, very importantly looking after each other's back. We did not leave anyone behind in Vietnam or Australians accounted for. What did I get out of Vietnam? It makes me a different person, character, spirit, and look at the life in different, working and sharing events with war with the most incredible people who become brothers for life. People are prepared to put their bodies on the line, and sometimes they believe in, and fight goes on today, like the veterans and their families. Many other voluntary pursuits, be it SES, AMBOs, fire, police, sporting clubs or young clubs. These young men of today's army are doing just as tough and difficult conditions in a different war, very hostile environment. But when it comes to young men and women of today's army, the spirit, the values and mateship is still enduring. Sadly, some families here today will be mourning for those who did not come home and have since passed. No one person here today has not been touched by war and its effects in some capacity. It brings us together today to remember and respect all those who served in whatever capacity, whether it's Boer War, World War I, World War II, Korea, in my case Vietnam, more recently the years of peacekeeping in the deserts and mountains of Iraq and Afghanistan, to honour and remember those who did not return, and one who is not here with us today. Today as we walked in, you'll notice the Australian flag, the rifle with the hat, and the soldiers pass, the rifle, the bayonet. There's a pause in the fighting, and the boots. If anyone says we have no heroes, you only have to look at the names on the cenotaph, the council honour boards, walls on the local hall, the bottle trees that line the avenue of the town, the plaques and rising sun cemetery around the Marinor as it reads their names. They are just not names. They are the names of young men and women who gave their service, gave up their dreams so we could have our dreams, our lifestyle. They are members of your community. Ladies and gentlemen, the empty chair is here for the ones who cannot be with us today, who are soldiers who are buried on distant lands, pilots who fought to keep our skies free, sailors who are in the abyss of the ocean depths. Many, their final resting place is only known to God. They were soldiers, pilots, sailors before they come men and women. They are members of our community. Don't let their sacrifice go for nothing. People say, why do I stand and honour our national flag? For those who disrespect your Australian flag and national anthem, they've never had to take the Australian flag from a veteran's coffin, fold it, walk over to the empty chair, or to a mother, father, wife, son, daughter, and present the flag. Take a back step, and as a lone tear rolls down your face to the ground, That tear is not alone. It joins the million of tears from ones who have shed for over the 103,000 young Australians who have sacrificed their life for you and me. Never apologise for loving our country. When we leave tonight at 7:30, over the 300 servicemen and women in this cemetery will rise. The bugle will see the last post. The minute's silence for those who are mates, and when they finish, a voice from just over here will ring out, "Lousy buggers, lousy buggers." What's wrong, Robert? You think they would have left the carton of forest gold with us in a handle glass? For us workers, lousy buggers. The fourth intake of 67. I will now dismiss you and thank you for listening to me. I thank you for your service and leave you with a few words. We stepped off the plane at 2 o'clock in the morning. I still had my 2 dog tags, I still got them. And if there's only a handout to say, welcome home. Welcome home to Australia. It may not be perfect, but it is the greatest place in the world. Welcome home. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Paddy Kerr. Certainly a very moving and a very insightful look into life in Vietnam. I would now like to invite Mr. Brian O'Rourke, another well-known local, to read a poem.
Thank you, Bryce. The Pact by Kay Goring. It was quiet that shift. I was on my last rounds. There was only the hum of the normal ward sounds. Will you listen? Now listen, an old man had said as I walked by the end of his hospital bed. Can you hear what I hear? Ah, it's a glorious sound. It's the thunder of hooves as they strike at the ground. I looked back at the man in the bed where he lay, for I knew he was dying and slipping away. He is rambling, I thought, as I turned his light down. Just another poor old soul in a hospital gown. It was then that he took a firm hold of my hand, and he told me, here's something I must understand. That tonight he was keeping a pact he'd once made to a mate he had known in the Light Horse Brigade. There were tears in his eyes, so I sat by his bed, and I'll never forget what it was that he said. All my mates, they were charging alongside of me when a bomb exploded. We just didn't see. For a moment I thought that the time had been stilled, that my mate and their horses, they had all been killed. Now my horse had stood near me, despite his own fear, with his blood running red and the enemy near. With my foot in the stirrup he'd made for the line, and he got me back safely, that war horse of mine. So I couldn't just leave him alone to his fate, and I spoke one more time to my gallant old mate. Now that horse, he had courage. I felt that I had none, but I knew from his bleeding what had to be done. Then I took up my rifle with trembling hands, while my curses rang aloud on those faraway lands. And I cried for my mate as I whispered goodbye, and I begged him to come when it's my time to die. So I have to be ready, the time is near. I can hear him coming with his saddle and gear. Then we'll turn on our heels and we'll make for the sky, and he'll carry me safely to heaven on high. Will you listen? Now listen to what I've said, for my soul will be leaving this wretched sick bed. Then you'll hear what I hear. Ah, it's a glorious sound. It's the thunder of hooves as they strike at the ground. Then his hand had just loosened and fell to his side, and I sat there a while as I quietly cried. But the air had grown cold, and my hair stood on end, as the curtains they shimmered, and time seemed to bend. I would swear that I saw a horse pawing the ground, with that man in the saddle, and turning around he was soon joined by others. The noise was a roar, and I knew that all things weren't quite the same as before. On such wonder I gazed as these ghosts all appeared. The man tightened the reins, and that mighty horse reared. It was then that I heard it, a glorious sound, the proud thunder of hooves as they charged heaven bound.
We will now conduct a roll call and a placing of flags by those conducting the roll call for the 22 soldiers of whose graves today we dedicate. The roll call and the placing of these flags will be conducted by Mrs. Tracy Lynch, representing the Honourable David Littleproud, the Honourable Anne Lay, MP, Member for Warrego, Mrs. Wendy Taylor, Mayor, Marinara Regional Council, and Mr. Cameron O'Neill, Councillor, Marinara Regional Council. Queensland Police Service, on behalf of the Roma Station, will also be placing a flag at this stage. Could those people please come forward for the roll call?
Private Harry George Bishop. Gunner George Herbert Brazier. Private William Joseph Campbell. Private Clarence James Cosgrove. Private Thomas Joseph William Drennan. Private Wallace Vincent Ferry.
Private Robert James Fisher. Gunner Archibald Thomas Gollier. Private Edward James Hartley. Private Ronald Howard. Private Charles William Naina.
Private Alfred Arthur Malone. Private Samuel Edward David Mercer. Trooper Joseph O'Keefe. Private Clement Burns O'Rourke. Private Guy Stewart Phillips.
Sergeant Valentine Pollock. Sergeant Herbert Reginald Richardson. Private Arthur Reginald Rees. Private William Knox Smales. Leading Aircraftman Guy Ernest Thrupp. Private Earl Thomas Turnbull.
Thank you very much. Those who have just conducted the roll call and the Queensland Police Service will now place a flag for all of our soldiers. Could you please follow the direction of Mr. Spike Precinct, Warrant Officer 2, retired. We will now commence placing flags for each of our 22 soldiers that we are recognising today. Flags will be placed by representatives of family or friends of each of our soldiers. Can I please ask, if you are not already over there, if you are one of the representatives placing a flag, to please go over to the tent area.
Right, we start today's dedication for Private Harry George Bishop, represented by his grandson Billy Bishop and sister Kim Hauser. George Herbert Brazier, represented here today by the Whitten girls, Carol O'Rourke, Julie Jackson. William Joseph Campbell, also known as Wig, Private, represented here today by Colin Trudell, great grandson. Clarence James Cosgrove, private. Represented today is Beryl Kirkbride, daughter, and Evan Cosgrove. Thomas Joseph Drennan, private. Family unable to attend today, but we've nominated Cameron O'Neill, Councillor Cameron O'Neill. Wallace Vincent Ferry, private, in the World War I, represented today by Helen Davies, the granddaughter, and her husband, John. Robert James Fisher, private, represented today in the family's absence by Dale Waldron, the Manager of Information Management and Cemeteries. Archibald Thomas Goller, also known as Archie, gunner. In their family's absence, we'll call on Amber Davis, Councillor Amber Davis, to substitute for the family. Edward James Hartley, also known as Ted, private, represented today by the Hartley family, Arthur Hartley, Robin Treadwell and Anne Hartley. Roland Howard, otherwise known as Rowley, private, and in family's absence we've asked Beryl Giles to substitute for him. Charles William Nyer, private, the first of our Boer War soldiers here today, represented by Anne and Viv Nyer. Alfred Arthur Malone, private. He's also known as Alf, and will be respected today by Gladys Beattie, his niece. Samuel Edward David Mercer, private. Family today here is Trish Bryder and her son Bentley. Joseph O'Keefe, trooper, the second of our Boer War soldiers, represented by Wallumbilla historian Rosalind Stemler in lieu of the family. Clement Burns O'Rourke, otherwise known as Clem, private, Port New Guinea, represented by the O'Rourke family today by Brian O'Rourke, the son, and Sean O'Rourke. Guy Stewart Phillips, private. Represented today is Jim Wilby, Vietnam vet, representing the family. Valentine Pollock, also known as Val, Sergeant, Port New Guinea, represented today by son Ronnie and grandson Ben. Herbert Reginald Richardson, Sergeant, First World War, represented today by the Swanwick boys, Ron, Ken and Alan, and also their cousin Alan Richardson. Arthur Reginald Rees, private. Represented here today is Will Rees. William Knox Smiles, private. Represented today by the Smiles family, Carolyn, Peter and Pam Smiles. Guy Ernest Thrupp, leading aircraftsman in the RAAF, represented today by Darren, Yvonne, Jan and Ryan Thrupp. Earl Thomas Turnbull, private, and in the absence of any family, being represented today by Councillor Merrill Brumpton.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brendan is now going to perform one of his songs, Bottle Tree Lane.
Bottle trees lining the lane where she met him, the place where her dreams had finally come true. Flickering sunlight, the dance of the branches, they walked beneath each afternoon. In a world going crazy, skies couldn't be clearer, so war was declared and her eyes filled with tears. The boy enlisted, she cried when he kissed her, and he whispered these words in her ear. Remember the good things the good Lord has given. Remember that love will remain. Here's to the wonderful life that we're living. We owe it to Bottle Tree Lane. Don't forget Bottle Tree Lane. Once more they walked through the trees in the evening, the only one smiling, the man in the moon. They promised each other forever. The sun came up too soon. The whole town turned out for their boys at the station, waving their flags as they boarded the train. He heard her voice as she ran down the platform, come back to Bottle Tree Lane. Remember the good things the good Lord has given. Remember that love will remain. Here's to the wonderful life that we're living. We owe it to Bottle Tree Lane. Don't forget Bottle Tree Lane. Time marches on, she became an old lady. The Anzac Parade made its way down the lane. The diggers passed by, recalling the fall, as each bottle tree bears a name. Everyone knew why she stood where she did, beside the same tree, on that day every year. And her grandchildren don't take for granted the reason they're able to play without fear. Remember the good things the good Lord has given. Remember that love will remain. Here's to the wonderful life that we're living. We owe it to Bottle Tree Lane. Remember the good things the good Lord has given. Remember that love will remain. Here's to the wonderful life that we're living. We owe to Bottle Tree Lane. Don't forget Bottle Tree Lane, lest we forget Bottle Tree Lane.
Thank you very much for that, Brendan. I do remember the year that song was released. It was the year that we lost one of our World War II veterans here in town, and that song was played at that funeral. I think it was the first time a lot of people had heard it, and it was a very moving song then, and it still is, so thank you very much. We will now be releasing some pigeons. During wartime, the significance of pigeons lay in their role as messengers, their reliability in relaying information from the front lines, from behind enemy lines, or even stranded units when all other forms of communication had failed or radio silence was critical. Their speed and endurance made them ideal couriers in all weather conditions. In peacetime, the release of pigeons are symbolic of many things, but today we are using them to symbolise peace and freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding if you are able for the ode, recited by Mr. Spike Precinct, Warrant Officer 2, retired. Please remain upstanding afterwards for the last post, followed by a minute's silence, Rouse, and the Australian National Anthem.
Ode to the fallen. They will not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age will not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
God to the front, salute! God to the front, salute!
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brendan Walmsley will now do a benediction.
Thank you, Bryce. Well, those of us who know the national anthem, we know that it contains the spirit of Australia. It's one of courage, resilience, and mateship, values that are forged through the sacrifices of those who have served before us. The freedom and peace that we enjoy today are the legacy of their commitment and sacrifice. The 22 returned service personnel we honour today from the Boer War, World War I and World War II embody this spirit. Though their graves were once unmarked and forgotten, their service is now rightly acknowledged and remembered. Their sacrifice is part of the story of our nation and of this community. It is fitting as we close this ceremony to ask for God's blessing on their memory, on this community, and the work of remembrance and gratitude that we share. So let us bow our heads and receive this pastoral benediction. As we go from this sacred place of remembrance, may we carry with us the weight and the honour of this moment. May the lives of these 22, once buried in silence, now honoured in light, remind us always that no act of service is forgotten by God, and no sacrifice is beyond the reach of love and gratitude. May the God of peace, who binds up the broken and remembers the lost, bless the memory of those we commemorate today, and bless this community who chose to remember. May their courage stir us to live with purpose. May their legacy lead us to peace. And may we walk forward in the quiet strength of those who gave so much and asked for so little in return. May we go now in reverence, go in peace, and go in gratitude. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding if you're able for the Australian Air Force Cadets and the Light Horse as they depart.
God, a church, one. God, a mountain. God, quick, fast. God, right, walk.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our service here today. The family and representatives, you are invited to come forward to retrieve your flag off the cross and reposition these on the graves of the soldiers themselves. Around the cemetery, there are flags on poles to indicate these locations. We also welcome you all to join us over at the Butter Factory on Station Street. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the town, back where you came in, if you go down over the railway line and then take the first left, the Butter Factory is just down there, where a complimentary brunch and refreshments will be available for purchase. We would also like to thank once again the sponsors and the supporters that are listed on the programs. And as we break off, Mr. Brian O'Rourke will play Soldiers of the Queen. Soldiers of the Queen is a song that was written and composed by Leslie Stewart in 1898. The song is often sung and published as Soldiers of the King, depending on the reigning monarch at the time. The tune was originally composed by Stewart as a march celebrating the opening of the Manchester Ship Canal, and the lyrics were added at a later date and the title was changed. This song served as the regimental march of the Queen's Regiment from 1966 to 1992. It is also the regimental march of the Lord Strathcona's Horse, Royal Canadians, the second most senior of Canada's cavalry regiments. It was also used as a theme for the film Breaker Morant. This is not intended as a concert performance, nor as light entertainment. It is a highly solemn piece and is dedicated to men and women from all theatres of war who have proudly worn the uniform of the Queen. There is to be no applause at the conclusion, please. Preferably, walk away in quiet thought whilst this music is playing and think of those you know who have served with their distinction. Thank you.